So I understand that you guys are going down to South by Southwest.
This year, South by approached us and were like, okay, we want you to do like a showcase and we want you to play our day stage. And then we just got approached to play another show. Hopefully it'll come through while we're down there.
Mm-hmm.
So it feels good to be asked to do things.
You're getting requested now.
Yeah, I mean, for now, we'll see, you know? Like,
I assume there was a long period of emailing and calling lots of people and trying to get shows, but now it's like you finally pivoted. Now it's sort of tilted the other way.
I think maybe it's like a peak or like a seesaw where some days maybe...
Okay.
Some days we're fighting to get heard, but again, it's like we're fighting to get heard in bigger places now.
But I wanted to ask you, I mean, are you excited? I mean, obviously you're excited about South by Southwest. Have you been to Texas before?
I have never been to Texas before except for a 3-hour layover on a flight back from Mexico.
Okay.
Like 15 years ago.
Okay. So, what are you expecting?
Barbecue.
I mean, I get the sense that as a New Yorker, that America's kind of out there waiting for you, but I'm not sure you're quite ready for it.
Yeah, it's like I'm expecting jug bands, guns everywhere, Confederate flags, and moonshine.
It's like you'd already been there.
No, in some ways it's like, you know, thinking that you're all high society turns you into this sort of like cave-dwelling, fire-worshipping troglodyte. So maybe I should stop being such a New York snob.
Now, I noticed that New York is kind of a fixture in all of your songs, and I understand that you grew up here, which is interesting because a lot of people sort of move here to make it in, you know, the music business or whatever, but I mean, you're so familiar with the place and it really shows in your music.
Yeah, it's crazy. I was actually a home birth in an apartment on First Avenue and First Street, and sort of never left. I lived in Jersey for a few years, but it's hard, you know, anywhere else you don't have access to the things that you need all the time, and that there's that feeling of like urgency when you live here, because if you can't get your hands on something that you need, you know, like where else can I be like, oh, I need a Twix bar and it's 3:30 in the morning, like.
But I noticed that New York is just, it's so central in all of your music. I mean, is that even a conscious effort, or is it just, you're just going to write a song about 11th Street?
Yeah, I mean, because it's where I've been. It's the backdrop to my whole life. And, you know, obviously, it's not like every single song on the record is necessarily torn out of something I've been through literally. But, yeah, there's this feeling of like, you can only really write what you know or be what you know. So that's where a lot of it comes from. And it tends to be the things that were more significant landmarks in my life do filter through and end up on songs, places, and things like that. I understand that you guys have gotten a fair amount of press online through, was it specifically through this Leonard Cohen cover that you did? I'm a huge fan of Leonard's music, and he actually just recently emailed me to say, like, I heard your cover of my song, and it was very excellent. I was like, floored.
Is that a verbatim quote? Something like that?
It was something like that. It was like, it was genuinely rad.
Do you have Leonard Cohen's personal email address?
Yes. Now. I didn't at the time, but...
That's pretty amazing. I mean, did you select that song because it was a specific thing that it was something you always really liked? I mean, the arrangement of it is so thoughtful and different from the way he recorded it that... Yeah, he's always been like a big hero of mine, probably my favorite musician, just because he's someone who doesn't... Before he was even a musician, he was a published novelist and poet, and so it's someone who, like, his work is really this extension of, like, a great creative body that is inside him, and so that's something I definitely would love to be able to emulate. Obviously, time will show, but I always noticed, especially with his later records, I just felt like he never got the arrangement that he deserved on a lot of his late albums. His early ones have this great timeless feeling of like they could have been recorded in 1901, they could have been recorded, you know, last week. And I noticed that on a lot of tribute records, that song was always missing, and it was always my favorite song of his. And so we were goofing around, we had some show, and I had learned it that afternoon, but I sort of wasn't thinking 6/8, I was thinking 4/4, 4/4, because I was just sort of feeling it then. So I said to everyone in the band, like, okay, the song is in C, just like watch me for the changes.
and we'll go.
If you had to distill, if you had to really think about what the purpose of Ravens and Chimes is, if it has a purpose, like, what is that?
Well, like, I guess what I can say to that is, like, that my goal in doing music and doing it this way, in such a public way, is, like, I want to communicate some feeling. My father once said in an interview, he was like, I want to tell my story, which I believe is everyone else's story, and to sort of, like, go and build on that as a concept. It's like, I think that there's a big feeling of being alone or incomplete, you know. I mean, every human feels it. Mm-hmm. And so to maybe bridge that gap between us and, you know, have one of those moments where we feel real togetherness. And, you know, I don't know, like, I never feel that so much as when, like, you're maybe in a club and everybody's dancing and singing along to the same song.
Right.
That's, like, just one of those transcendent feelings, actually. Yeah. With the Montreal thing, I remember before I was old enough to get into bars, I drew, like, the stamp on my hand and then wet it and smeared it and snuck past the door guy at this club in Montreal. And there was, like, 1,000 kids in this room, and everyone was dancing, and Van Morrison came on. And it was just, like, one of those crazy, stellar, awesome moments of, like, oh, yeah, music, transcendent.